it's Micah. Sorry I couldn't get to the phone right now, but I'll call you back as soon as I can. Bye.
Please leave a message after the tone.
Hello, it's Brooke. Pick up. I've got so much to tell you. Anyway, call me back. Love you.
Wicked. We're holding space.
We have, you know how sick I am? Let me tell you something. When you sent me that video this morning, I was
crying.
I was just glad to, like, collectively, as a nation, as a group, as a people,
we ended racism.
With that video, we, for sure, at least for one slim second, united everybody and going, where was that interviewer trying to go with that?
We don't know. We will never know.
But I think about her holding the single finger at least once a day.
As a modality of support.
At least once a day. Nobody needed that. Nobody understood that. Nobody listening to that interview went, wow, that was super profound. Everybody collectively, as a people,
said, we're making this a meme.
We're going, this is why nobody takes Hollywood interviews seriously, because they're trying to add gravity and depth to this aerated question that doesn't make any sense. But she said, this means something to me. And it went past everybody else.
Yeah. No, well,
do you want to talk about holidays today? That was something you wanted to talk about last week, but I really didn't do that much research.
Oh, I didn't do enough research either. I went fully down the megachurch rabbit hole.
Yes. I don't know how to segue into that, but here we are. I wrote down this quote, and this was a YouTube comment on some video I was watching. I don't know where it's from, but they had posted, Jesus visited the temple in Jerusalem, a massive structure and meeting place dedicated to God. He never once criticized it or its opulence. Rather, he drove out those who were defiling it. They said, I think he would be okay with thousands who were also reaching out and showing God's love to the community, which I think we are. Which ties more into the megachurch conversation, but could also tie into, does God care about churches that celebrate Christmas with trees and presents and Christmas events in the parking lot, like big community events? Does God look at the church and think that's the use for it?
It all depends. What is your intention? And are you conveying that to the public you're trying to reach? Or are you conveying the world to the public you're trying to reach? Because this is my whole argument with the megachurch we talked about last week. If the church has to be worldly for you to come in, are you actually looking for God? Or are you just looking for more of the world? So if you're doing these like Christmas events and whatever, and all you're showing is what the rest of the world is looking at, are you actually being helpful in the mission of spreading the good news?
Okay, well, that was my tag-along question, is that because in all these churches, you see a good chunk of trees, tall trees, 9-footers, and the lobby is decorated, and it's ornate, and it's opulent was a great word to use for it, and it all looks so nice. But is it necessary just to give people that, like, ooh, you know, it's so Christmassy in here, it's so like, is that what you need to bring into church? Or why did you spend, because I know people who hire decorators for churches who get paid a good sized chunk of money by the church. I think
it's okay to want to present your church well. And, like, I think it's okay to decorate. It's all about the intention. Like, what is our intent here?
I think the year before, we went to this big Christmas fest that this church was having in a parking lot. And it was games and rides, and it was completely free to the community. And it was so fun. And all the prizes that the kids got were, like, small toys or candies with Bible verses wrapped around them.
I think that's great.
And I thought that was an amazing use of funds giving back to the community. And then you walked out really interested in being like, hey, that seems like a nice church that actually really cares about making sure that people are coming to the church, at least walking in the building, right? And having fun where they're not asking for 1,000 donations at the door or charging $20 a ticket to get in.
Well, I think things like that are fine. I think that there's, which, like, who am I? What's my opinion? But I think there's definitely room in the church for fun, and then there's room. There's a space, holding space. There's a space for fun. There's a space for generosity. There's a space for events. But it all, again, comes down to what is the heart posture in this? What is the intention? What message are we conveying? Does this actually represent what our church does on a regular basis? And I think it's also a fine line between this whole thing with the megachurches of, are we drawing in the world or are we acting just like the world?
Right.
Because the end goal is not to be like, oh, look at us, we're entertaining, we're cool, we're relevant, and we also talk about Jesus sometimes.
Well, you know what? I was doing my...
Oh, she broke out the book. She broke out the good book.
I was reading specifically because this just goes to show how when you ask for a passage, he'll give you one. It says, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? So therefore, whoever wishes to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. Or do you suppose it is to no purpose that the scripture says he yearns jealously over the spirit that he has made to dwell in us, but he gives more grace? Therefore, it says, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. And I think specifically with pastors that lead mega churches, it all comes down to humility. And the flashiness makes me feel the opposite of humble. So when we were talking specifically about the pastor that went on shirt wearing a $2,000, not designer, by the way. I thought designer, but just $2,000 sweater. Still $2,000.
What's the difference?
I don't know, a label. When I looked up that pastor's, what I could access, and who knows if it's right, but what I could access, it says that a majority of his income is about $40,000 from the church, and everything else is made off of YouTube, platforms, social media, merchandise. So technically, are you taking the salary that a pastor probably should humble themselves to live under? Right? Are you taking only that certain amount from the church? Yes. But where is the humility in walking on stage in front of your congregation in a $2,000 sweater when the biggest thing to me is that you are not accessible to your flock. You are allowed the right to have nice things and wear them on dates and wear them out in public, but on stage, this is where we need to have some consideration, where you go, people are watching me give a message right now about how you need to deny yourself and pick up your cross and follow me, and I'm doing it in a $2,000 sweater on Sunday morning when I could have worn this on Tuesday afternoon.
Or not at all.
That's
or
my
not
thing.
At all.
Because if you want to have that sweater and you have the funds to do it that aren't coming from the church, I don't know if I necessarily think it's right that you're getting YouTube money from your church sermons. That's not going back into
I
the church.
never even thought about that because they have so many subscribers. They are getting a fat check from YouTube. I have never even considered that. Wow.
Millionaires. And I don't think pastors should be millionaires in any form of anything.
Well, and here's my thing. I don't think that it's a sin to make money. I don't think it's a sin to be wealthy. I think you are called to be a good steward of your money and do all of that under the Lord's direction. So if under God's authority, you talk to God and said, hey, how do you want me to use my money? And he said, Pastor so-and-so, I want you to buy that $2,000 sweater and wear it on stage. Go for it. But I highly doubt, I have strong speculation that did not happen. So how are you being a good representation of the faith to your congregation?
That's my thing too, right? Is that, yes, it's not a bad thing to make money, and it's not church money coming in through donations or tithes or whatever when a YouTube check is mailed into your account. But net worths of some pastors right now, while they might not be coming from your salary at the church, are astronomical. More than most people will see in 10 lifetimes.
Yeah.
And in today's economy. I really, truly don't fault somebody for having the wealth and 4 or 5 kids. If you want to live where you want to live, that's fine. But to buy the house out of wanting to present so well and so wealthy and so well put together, you know, living where you want to live and making all of these things to just say, I'm buying this house based on teaching the word of God, which says to
Forget everything.
pick up your cross and follow me.
Yes.
And then I willingly choose to go in my closet and say, instead of, hey, I'm going to put on a white t-shirt and a pair of jeans to go up and preach my message, instead it's, I'm going to wear the most fashionable thing I can because people want to look at a well-dressed pastor that's hip and fun.
They're there to
cool.
entertain you. They're not there to teach you the word of God.
And I think that's a huge fumble on the humility aspect of things.
And again, it goes back to what
celebrity
are your intentions?
pastors become my issue.
Yes. Well, okay. I've got to dive back into the Mike Todd stuff because this really wraps into it. He did the Tesla sermon.
Even that's not a vehicle that most people will be able to acquire.
No.
On a basic level of needing transportation. If you wanted to have a Honda Civic waiting in the parking lot for somebody who really needed a car, by all means, way to bless somebody.
Well, and just these extravagant productions.
Cybertruck.
Yes.
Onto stage when that's
ridiculous.
Not attainable for people in need, for real people in need.
Look what we got. Look what we can do.
But even to the congregation, to look at somebody who says, I'm in need, I'm hungry, my bills are not paid, I can't take care of my kids, I'm having this and this and this issue. I need the basic necessity of knowing that my lights are going to be on, my water is still running, and I have food in my fridge for my kids. To look at somebody and say, okay, well, we're going to gift you this Cybertruck because God told us to. That feels so unaware and so disconnected.
Yes.
From what your church probably needs. And I don't know who's in your crowd, but I know that there's somebody in there who's struggling to keep their lights on.
Oh yeah, they're in the comments of their YouTube channels. This is what pisses me off, quite frankly, is that he then drives the Cybertruck up there and whatever. And I think this past week, like, he's been catching a lot of flack. And this last week, I watched the beginning of his sermon, and I feel like he's trying to do damage control. He said something about, I don't want to gatekeep. I want you guys to get the same blessings that I get. So you're telling your congregation, hey, do as I do, and you'll get this Cybertruck, you'll get this jewelry, you'll get this whatever. And then there's people in the comments going, God, I'm asking for food. I'm asking for a job. I'm asking for this, and I know you'll provide. Because based on this teaching that Michael Todd just gave us, if I give 10, I'm going to get back 100. But that's one, not biblical. And two, this like prosperity gospel just is mind-blowing. It's completely irresponsible.
Well, two, on that same note, you have those pastors standing on stage and going, well, if you do what I do, you can get what I have. And look at what God has blessed me with. And look how good of a steward I am. That's not the Bible. It's not the Bible, but also it's not the way to reach the unknown, because the people who don't know God yet, they're sitting there on their knees begging, talking to God, saying, okay, I'll
like
take a
he's
fourth.
A genie in a bottle.
I'll take a fourth of what you gave him. I just need food. And if you've blessed him so much, let me be like him and train me to be like him so that you'll bless me the way that you've blessed him, because all I need, I'm hungry. I'm just hungry.
Well, and here's the thing. Like, the Bible says, knock and the door will be open, ask and you shall receive. That is somebody that has an established relationship with Jesus, that has a faith, that is under the direction of God. So you are asking under authority of God. And I don't think people understand that. You're not just saying, hey, I woke up today and God, please give me a Tesla. God says, ask and you shall receive. God will never let you go without what you need. Not what you want, what you need. And it's under his authority. So if God hears you praying and says, yes, this is on track with my will for your life, then yes, the answer is yes. But if you're asking and it's not under the will of God, you can expect a big fat no. And when you're being preached this prosperity gospel all the time, then you're going to be like, hey, what's the deal? What's the deal with this, God? Where are you? And he's like, honey, I'm here. Where are you?
Right. Well, that same passage that I just read, this is what I read. This is what I opened my Bible to this morning, which is how I know that we were supposed to talk about it in some aspect. It says the first part of what I read earlier is it not this, that your passions are at war within you? You desire and you do not have, so you murder. You covet and cannot obtain, so you fight and quarrel. You do not have because you do not ask, but you do ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly. To spend it on your passions is word for word what it says in here. You ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly. To spend it on your passions, you adulterous people.
Mm-hmm.
I could not believe when I opened that this morning because I knew you were going to talk about this.
Yes.
And I said, I got Bible for it. I got
opinions.
It's right here.
Well, the other thing is, so I had kind of the same conversation, and I'm not dragging anybody. A friend of mine's mom was considering divorcing her husband, and she had sat us down and told us about it and said, like, I really don't know what to do, but I know that I'm not happy. And she, word for word, said, I don't think God would want me to be this unhappy. And I'm thinking, God doesn't promise us happiness. So if you look in Transformation Church's mission, it says, like, we believe that through faith, everyone that is saved will have health, something, and success. That's in their mission statement. And I'm like, that's not even biblical. God doesn't promise us health and wealth and success. He doesn't promise us anything that's worldly. He promises us joy
and
through
peace.
him.
Peace and suffering.
Not of the world.
Peace
so it doesn't
and suffering.
mean, yeah, like, it doesn't mean that you're ever going to be happy on earth. It doesn't mean you're ever promised happiness or joy in worldly things.
And that is a hard pill. Ooh, let's get into it.
Hard pill to swallow.
Hard pill to swallow, because God does not say you were put on this earth to be happy. He says you were put on this earth to worship me.
Yes.
And to follow me.
Well, and so Mike Todd, his argument of this whole, like, giving thing during the Tesla deal was, if you give, you're going to get, and you're going to keep getting, you're going to keep getting blessings. And so I left a comment and I said, what does Michael Todd have to say to the ministries and the missionaries that have literally left everything behind and have not reaped a single thing and have been killed for their faith? They gave everything and didn't receive anything in return. So, like, in that aspect, Michael Todd's whole thing is invalid. There was, come with me, 400 years of silence between the Old Testament and the New Testament. You're telling me, based on Michael Todd's teaching, those people that were faithful and loyal and disciplined for 400 years, they should have been swimming in money and wealth and success. But they weren't. They were faithful and they were loyal, and they never, ever saw the benefit of that.
They don't even get mentioned in the Bible.
Right, but their faith led to, like, the decisions that you make now, you may never, ever see the goodness of it. But that's the whole point of being faithful. It's not for a reward. It's not about you.
It's not for a reward on earth. It's not for...
Right, it's not material.
It's not for material comfort while you're here. We broke this down in my apologetics class like 2 weeks ago. What's evident in the Bible is that there is no comprehension for how good heaven is going to be. It is a place of complete peace and comfort and joy. You're going to be able to live on in the new earth and in heaven the way that it is supposed to be. But that's the end goal. I do believe that God shows up financially in ways, but I don't, it's not like a math problem.
Right.
Okay, well, if I tithe this and I do this and I help these people, I'm going to be perfectly happy. And that is something that is not preached enough in modern church. It is this feel good, God is all love and God is love, but God is also just. When you're down here on earth, your only job from testimony of the Bible is to share the gospel. But it's not here on earth for you to be a millionaire and wear the best clothes and be happy all the time. Because there are things that you're called to in life that are supposed to not make you happy. There are things you're supposed to suffer through, and choosing to put your faith in Jesus instead of chasing after those things that are going to make this experience comfortable and privileged. And then when you die, what did you do? Francis Chan, he did lead a megachurch, and he was this incredibly well-known well-funded, sought-after pastor. And he
Mhm.
left everything behind. He left his church behind, sold all of his stuff, and moved his family, I think, out to maybe Asia or Africa, and has taught the gospel to like rural communities for the past like decade. Those are the people who had it and said, oh, okay, I think I'm missing the mark. And I'm still in my calling that God is,
Mhm.
I'm meant to be a pastor, but I'm going to go preach to the people that need it.
That all depends on like the authority of God too, because I've heard this also. People are like, well, is everybody just supposed to throw everything away and go to a third world country and preach the gospel?
Right.
Well, no, it depends. You have to have a relationship with Christ, and you
Right.
have to listen to the authority of God. What is his will for you? You
Well,
can't just willy-nilly be like, oh, well, this is what other Christians do, so let me just go be a
yes.
missionary to a third world country. Like, no. For me, I wanted to be a missionary on my own mind. I was like, oh, my grandparents were missionaries. I just think that'd be awesome. And then I pursued nursing.
Mhm.
Everything kept bringing me back to the medical field. Your job can be your mission. Like being a nurse can be a mission field. Being a businessman can be a mission field. Like you don't have to literally give up your home and your belongings and
Right.
whatever.
You should give up the idea of what you think your life should be.
Yes, yeah.
I'm figuring out what my mission is right now. I'm not a missionary. I know I'm not a missionary. I just don't have that understanding or calling on my life at this point. That's why I'm not a professor. That's not why I'm not a theologian. That's not mine. That's not my calling. That's not me. Working with animals, I don't know if it's my calling, but it's something that I really do find joy in. And it's not because it's easy, and I could be wrong. I don't think it's anybody's mission to stand up on a stage and create and preach from a life that seems so unattainable that you start to doubt whether God loves you as much as he loves that person on stage because of what they show off.
Oh, girl. You
in their
gotta
life.
listen.
That doesn't feel like a mission to me as a man of God.
I listened to part of Michael Todd's sermon from last week before we got on here because I wanted to see what he's been saying about the controversy. And it does feel like he's doing like some damage control. But he made a comment. I just need to go on a quick Michael Todd thing because I'm just really upset. I'm really disturbed. I'm really disappointed.
It hurts too because we have to take that responsibility of saying, okay, we really liked him and we really trusted him.
And I'm going there. I'll go there.
As a preacher years ago, that you start to, at least for me, I need to remember that man constantly lets me down. I don't need to take that out on God.
And I definitely recognize that church did for both of us. It really kind of like brought us back to what we needed to come back to. However, I do think that our eyes in the last couple of years have been opened. We have a new discernment. We have more knowledge. And for me personally, when I was introduced to that church, I thought, oh, this is new. It's cool. They do stuff a little different. Like this relates to me. But I was more so like, well, if this is how this church gets down, and that kind of more aligns with how my life looks right now. Like it makes certain things feel okay. So yeah, I'm drawn to this church because it's new and it looks more like my life. But was I going to that church to seek God, or was I going to seek not an excuse, but like...
Yes, I get what you're saying.
Like it made me feel a little bit better about my walk and how my walk hadn't been so clean and disciplined. Like, oh, they're a little flawed and they do this a little different. Look at how their pastor looks and how he speaks. And if that's okay, then I'm okay with how I've been living. That's what I thought when I started going there.
Well, me too, because it's, you look at that person, you're like, oh, he's funny. He's cool. Like even people who aren't Christians like him, you know? And that's how I want to be.
But does that mean that his teaching was still good back then?
I don't know.
Not necessarily. Because he even admitted very nonchalantly, and this is what disturbs me, he very nonchalantly, jokingly admitted on stage, I listened back to some of my sermons, and man, that stuff was heresy. And you just are chill, like you're just chilling, joking about that?
Or you're leaving it up for views and money?
And left it up? Well, he said something about, I thought about maybe taking that down. You thought about it, but you didn't do it. And here's the fact is that, like, people like you and me, had we not come back around and seen that video, I would just take his word for what it, I mean, not that you should ever take people's word for what it is, but that's so irresponsible. And my other question is, where is your leadership? Where is the church leadership? Where are the deacons or the members or whatever you have that are allowing you to run your mouth like this? Just complete heresy, and you're admitting to it, and we're joking about it, and you're making a spectacle of yourself, and everything is about you.
Well,
where's the leadership? Somebody needs to hold them accountable.
The thing is too, right? You have to be careful. And this comes from like a people-pleasing mentality that I am working on. But it is important to keep in mind that everybody's human, nobody's perfect. Everybody's going
Yeah, but
to
this
mess
is
up.
beyond that.
When you are speaking and what you're saying, you're delivering as the word of God. You say, this is what I was told to preach on this
And when
week.
you say, I prophesy, and it's just some made up BS.
You have to give grace for people because we've all done stupid things. But the Bible does say there's a different level of judgment for those who teach, and not everybody should become teachers.
And my issue is there's no repentance. There's no remorse. Like, when he's been called out on things, he deflects and he blames other people. When people in his church said, I feel like God's calling me somewhere else, I'm going. And he said, tell me the real reason you left. On a talk show?
I saw that, and I don't know.
That's never okay.
The backstory
There's no
of
excuse
it.
for that. I don't care what the backstory is.
It's so hard for me to say because obviously pastors are still people, and I think you can be called to be a preacher, and then you let the fame and the money and all that go to your head, and then you get emotional and you have emotional reactions to things. And I do think it was petty, and I do think it was wrong the way he handled it. But you need to have people around you that say, hey, we might need to address a couple things, instead of saying, yeah, get him, boy, like
Exactly.
like, let's keep this going. How we're operating is completely fine.
Good with having grace. I'm good with people are human. I'm good with people make mistakes, but this is not one mistake. This is you are teaching on a weekly basis, knowing. Well, somebody said Mike Todd admitted to it in a sermon. I couldn't find that sermon where he said he doesn't read the Bible before he gives a sermon. But somebody that used to work for him said he watches videos of other people delivering the same message that he wants to deliver. It goes to his sermon team, which is not unheard of. People have sermon teams that help prepare sermons all the time. That's normal. He doesn't actually make the effort. So yeah, you have this calling on your life, and that's fine. If you're called to be a good speaker and an entertainer, that's great. But put in the effort, do the faith part of it. So he's going up there teaching just enough for it to sound biblical. There's just enough there to pull you in and say, well, like, yeah, that is kind of in the Bible. But then to knowingly be saying it and not have been spoken to from God, that is like, it gets me so fired up. How irresponsible of you.
Well, too, his whole testimony is that he wanted to be in music and he wanted to be in entertainment and he wanted to do all this, and God told him no and to walk away from like $1 million record deal, whatever the story is. I don't remember all the details. But you have to remember too, there is a place, if you're a good speaker and you're an entertainer,
be that.
Go be an entertainer. You can be a Christian entertainer, and you can infiltrate Hollywood in a way that people like Chris Pratt, I think, is an amazing example of it.
Yes.
He is a Christian, he's faithful, he's a husband, he's a father, he's made some goofy ass decisions in his life, but I think the way that he speaks about it, he loves God. I really think that. And I think that you can do that and still have your passion and be funny and be entertaining and be an incredible actor. And you can, and he's not the only example, but if that's what you're called to, go do that. Mm-hmm. But there's a different,
but if you're accepting a role as a teacher and a preacher, of different level.
Directly of the word of God. If you say, I want to be a preacher, let it be known. We are not preachers. This is us discussing questions about our faith, trying to understand the Bible more. There is not a day in my life so far that I've ever thought, oh, that would be fun to get up. I think I know enough about that, and God has spoken to me enough about that subject. I could go up and preach a message on it and feel like I was being called to do that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a specific calling on your life that you have to hold the responsibility to if that's what you were called to do. And there's that
Yeah.
fine line of trying to reach the world and being of the world.
There was some stuff I don't even remember. I was reading through all of 1st and 2nd Timothy, and there's just all kinds of stuff. So if you're interested in knowing the responsibility, the depth, the weight of being a preacher and a teacher of the Bible, if you're interested in what we're talking about, go to 1st and 2nd Timothy. Take a little gander at that.
1st and 2nd Peter too, or both.
Yeah.
And they're all short. They're tiny. You can flip through them in 10 minutes if you really wanted to.
But here's my other thing. So I don't come on here just to be, I'm very irritated and disappointed in Mike Todd. And I hope that he takes this constructive criticism that everybody is throwing at him, and instead of deflecting it, does some self-internalizing. I don't know if that's going to happen. I'm not just trying to run his name through the mud just to do it. I'm just trying to point out that it is so important to have discernment and to use it wisely.
It shouldn't be bad to ask questions either. If you have a problem with somebody who's that big of a figure and is claiming to be a man of God, they should be able to stand there and say, okay, here's my answer for your concerns.
Yes. I think the biggest issue with our generation in general, maybe our parents' generation too, can be wrapped into this, is biblical literacy. Like, people do not know the Bible. They do not read the Bible. It's inconvenient. It's time-consuming. The context is hard. Yeah, you have to actually do research to understand what they're saying, who they're saying it to, what was going on at the time. If you don't do that, if I'm lazy, I'm just going to go listen to whatever preacher has a good reputation and call it a day. But it is so, so important. It's something I'm really working on because that's been lacking in my life. I'll be the first one to admit I am terrible about reading my Bible. I'm trying so hard to do better about it.
That's why I started that class. Are you kidding me?
I can sit and binge Hulu, but I can't sit and just scroll. I can scroll through Instagram for 3 hours, but I can't scroll my Bible app. What am I doing?
Class too, and I reference my class all the time because it is so insightful and it has made me understand the Bible in a way that I have not ever been able to do on my own, because it is hard to understand the time frame that everything in the Bible happened versus when it was written versus what happened afterwards versus how the letters of the church were passed around versus what was happening in the historical context around the world. It is hard to dive into all of that. But my pastor was telling the story of a mission trip they took over to China. It was in the 90s, and at that time, it was illegal to be a Christian. It might still be, I'm not sure. But when they got to whatever house they were staying at, they went into the basement, and it was such a coordinated operation to get them one tattered, shredded, hand-copied version of the Bible. One Bible. They would take notebook pages, copy the words, stick it in sand at the beach, miles away, have somebody else come and get it, write down their copy of it, stick another sheet in there, and pass it around that way. And the original ones that they copied and that had been thrown in the sand were binded together into this Bible. And when they got there, that's what they read from for their Bible study in secret. And they asked our pastor, do you want to write down a copy so that every person in your church can have one? Because they can't imagine a church with 300 people. And our pastor started to choke up, and I'm going to start to choke up.
It makes me emotional.
But he said, I couldn't sit there and break their hearts and say, you have no idea that people in our church have 3 or 4 Bibles at their house, and we use them as doorstops, and we don't read them. And we don't care about them. We don't see the value in them. If it's not the coolest looking leather bound Bible, if we even have a physical one, because we can get it on our phones. You know, you have no idea the power and the privilege of just having a copy of this and being able to read it in public.
And meanwhile, in America, we're preaching about materialistic things.
So convenienced here, and we are so comfortable, and we take so much for granted. Those people in China will never know the historical context of what they're reading, but they know that the power of those words is real and it's true, and they believe it with their whole heart. And some people have the audacity to stand on stage and say, if you want to be blessed the way that I've been,
Exactly. That's what I was saying earlier.
That's part of letting yourself go and following what God has for you. But we think we have this formula and it's being mass produced on YouTube. You need the discernment to be able to sit down and figure it out for yourself. And this thing will not lie to you. It is impossible for this thing to lie.
You know what I really want to read while I was like doing my Christmas research? Who decided what the books of the Bible were and when they were put together and all of that? Like, who was that? Do we trust those people? I just was asking very broad questions as if I knew nothing and I was an outsider. What questions would I have? And then I was like, wow, that's actually it's kind of an interesting question. And so I was like digging into that, and then it started talking about the Apocrypha, the books that were left out. Right. Because it was decided that it didn't align with
they were heretical in some way.
So I read a lot about that and how people said, yeah, maybe don't hold that to the same concrete structure that you hold the Bible, but it has good knowledge in it. So I really want to read the Apocrypha just to understand like what was left out and why.
What's interesting is that we touched on that in class. But he said, did you know that there's a third Peter that's not in the Bible?
It was taken out, yeah.
Well, there's a third letter, and somebody had asked, okay, so obviously Peter's a trusted source. Why do we not have the third Peter? Why do we not have the book of Enoch, right? It's a huge one. Why was it taken out before the final formation of what the Bible is known as today? And his response is that you have to have the faith that God is big enough and good enough to have put the pieces that we needed into one book. If you don't believe that, you don't believe in God.
You need to check your faith, yeah.
Because if you think there's something missing, that means you think God got it wrong. And there's something else that you need to know about him to be able to know he's perfect and good and to know the whole story of the gospel rather than what's in here. So he said, have we seen the third letter of Peter? Yes. Is it excluded in the Bible for a reason? It wasn't needed. Everything that you needed to know was in 1st and 2nd Peter. So those were the letters from the church.
Well, and when I first posed that question, I was thinking about like, oh, well, if people like Michael Todd are appointed, which I'm not trying to hate on Michael Todd all day today. I'm sure that he was appointed to a speaking, preaching, whatever. Sure, he was appointed to that. He maybe is just misusing his platform right now, and he needs to regather himself. Whatever. I'm not trying to hate on him all day long. But I was really fired up about that. And I thought if people like Michael Todd are in a preaching position and nobody is holding them accountable, nobody's checking them, then how do we trust like the people that were appointed to put the Bible together and people that made Christmas Day for a political reason? Right. Like how do we decipher what's good and what is whatever? And then I was kind of like, not my job. Yeah. God's got that. God appointed those people and God said this is how it's going to be. And if it were done incorrectly, I believe he would have intervened.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
So I was like asking all these crazy questions. I was like spitfiring Micah all these text messages and trying to play devil's advocate. And I was just like, these are great questions. And she's like, what are you talking about?
Well, then, you read the Bible and you're like, okay, that one's a little harsh. We didn't need that one. If you're going to talk about being a God of like forgiveness and grace, why is Leviticus in here? Who needs it? If that's the old law and we have the new law now, why you gotta make me feel so guilty all the time? But then you also read Song of Solomon's and you're like,
Lord, that was spicy.
I don't know if I was supposed to read that when I was 13.
I don't know that I was supposed to read that.
I don't know what the reason is for every single word that was translated in the Bible, but I know it was supposed to be in there for some reason. And we can get into the most controversial texts of the Bible, horrible things that happened. We can get into all that. We can get into 2 Timothy, I think, is the one that talks about women not preaching in the Bible.
I was just about to say, I got checked so hard today because I'm like, angry and I'm going through 1st and 2nd Timothy and I'm like, these people need to read this. People need to understand what it means when you're preaching and what is false teaching and da-da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like reading and I'm like, oh yeah, that's good. I'm going to save that. That's good. I'm going to bring this up. And then I'm go down to the bottom.
Women
should not preach or teach. Women should not teach man. Women were deceived in the garden. Yes. And I was like, oh, Let me just unhighlight that verse.
Which is we'll unpack that a whole other time.
Say, God, are you talking to me?
He said he can't be talking to me.
I don't think he's talking about me.
You cannot
In
be talking
2024, are you
Not
sure?
me.
Should we have left this one out?
Yeah.
This belongs in the Apocrypha.
Does this part matter? Did we miss one?
I'm gonna have to talk to God about that one because I think he maybe missed the line.
You know what else is an interesting fact, though? Because everybody always wants to, like, crap on Eve because she's the one that, you know, but we all just, I guess, assume it's an apple. In class one night, he said, he was like,
But look,
everybody...
Adam was in charge of her.
He said, you know, everybody is like, okay, well, Eve screwed it up, and that's why we have pain when we have babies and have periods and whatever. And he said, that is why it is so important that the man that leads your life is a man that follows God, because he should have been watching over her to make sure that she wasn't deceived by something that looked so enticing.
Yes.
And he said, yes, it's Eve's fault, but
where was Adam?
Adam let her fall, and therefore he wasn't holding up his end of the deal. She was his rib. He should have been taking care of her. He should have been watching her, not because he owned her. It was his godly duty to protect her and to be there and to intercede when things were coming into her mind, telling her something opposite of what God had directly told them.
Mm-hmm.
And so Adam failed in his duty as the leader of their house, and therefore Eve fell into temptation.
I remember when I first heard that, and I was like, man, I've been shaped my whole life for being a woman.
I know.
And here we are again,
and
it was a man. Oh my gosh. There's so much we could get into. I feel like we've really found, your mom was right. We have found our little niche. We've found our things.
It scares me though. You want to be completely transparent though.
We don't know what we're talking about. That's my transparency.
But it scares me to have a platform when I'm not a theologian, right? When I have this confidence in my relationship with God, but I am neck deep in my own sin. I am learning about things that I don't fully understand. I have so many questions about when and where and why and how.
Yeah.
And coming on here, I think the best thing is just to keep asking questions and keep talking through it and keep working through those things. Like, I have such a renewed fear of God, a healthy fear of God, as one should. I don't want to get up there one day and him say, okay, you got a whole lot wrong and you didn't do your due diligence before you got on.
I think we've been very open about we're learning all this with new eyes. We have taken a self-appointed journey. We want to discover the Bible for ourselves. We want to know what it says. We want to renew our walk with God. We are exploring our faith openly and publicly.
Right.
And we've admitted that we are going to mess up, but we're going to apologize when we mess up, and we're always going to own up to it. And I also think back to the me of like 2020, 2019, that had no idea what to do, felt like everybody either had it together or they didn't. There was no middle ground. And I think it's really important for us to represent a group of people that are asking the same questions internally and that are not able to ask them externally, or they don't have the confidence to ask them externally, that maybe haven't been exposed to a different way of thinking. Like you and I disagreeing on the whole Christmas thing, or agreeing, I'm not really sure where we stand. Like, it's good to hear that back and forth, because it sparks your own it sparks your own questions. And then, like, you know, you're able to pray about things like that maybe you hadn't thought of before. So I think, while yes, we don't know it all, and we're definitely gonna mess some things up and be wrong and have to come on here and say, hey, we were wrong about this, I still think it's really important that we represent people that are just like us, that are in the middle, that don't have it together, but we're trying to figure it out.
Right.
And I'm going to have to do so much more research on this whole Christmas thing and see what I can scrounge up.
You know what question I was going to ask?
Oh gosh, what?
Do you think America was founded as a Christian country?
I think that...
Just ponder for a little bit. Because I was going to ask that question, because it used to irk me. It used to irk me when, and I'm a proud American. I love living here. I don't want to be anywhere else. I am good here.
Mhm.
Love it. But it used to irk me when people would say, okay, well, God loves America so much. And God, like, Christian
Ew.
nationalism doesn't sit right with me.
We can talk about that next week because I got a
Right?
whole bunch to say about that.
So I love being an American. I think we're super blessed here. But I don't think that just because we have a better economy than a lot of places and we have a lot more freedoms, I don't think that that discounts God's love for everywhere else. I don't think there's a special place reserved in heaven that says God's
Americans,
favorite. That says
this
God's
gate's
favorite.
for you.
and then underneath it says Americans this way
We
towards
got the
favorites.
TSA Pre-Check for heaven
The
over
VIP
here
room.
if you were American.
The VIP room is over here for Americans. You know? I don't get down with it.
No, and I think if anything, if you're in a country where it's harder to access God and you're making that much more of an effort, like what you said, to read the Bible, to me, that faith is so much more real because it has to be. And if anything, I would hold that in higher regard than being in America where it's easy.
And you take it for all
and you're
for
just
granted.
like,
and we also
I'm covered, I'm good, I'm blessed.
Make a huge mockery of God and Jesus' sacrifice by saying that. I'm good, I'm covered. I don't need to try. I don't need to feel guilty. I don't need to be obedient. I don't need to do anything. I'm good. America.
I'm covered.
You know, my faith has nothing to do with my nationality.
The only thing I think of is like, yes, when people came over to America on boats, the culture was more strongly religious, but that was their culture. I don't think they were like, oh, we're coming to America solely for the purpose of evangelizing the gospel.
Right.
I don't think that was what was happening.
Ooh, put a pin in that. I like that statement. I like that statement. We'll revisit that.
Okay. Yeah.
They came because they wanted freedom.
Yes.
And if that's, I'm all for that, you know, but different things, different compartments.
Oh my gosh.
Are you going to do it back?
I'm so sorry. You were frozen.
Well, this is our final episode of Sweetie Podcast.
Our friendship has come to an end.
I don't know what the last sentence is going to be. I'm excited to talk. It's probably not going to be next week because I'm going to be in Hawaii.
We understand that not every person is going to have the same viewpoint on every single subject, and we try to understand where the other person's coming from. That's a goal of ours. We want to have a well-rounded understanding of what we're talking about, and just, you know, that's just who we are at our core. So it's good to have conversations and disagree with people. That's all I'm trying to say.
And you should too.
Thanks for listening to my defensiveness today.
No, you should too. You should have friends in your life that...
Yes.
In fact, I would argue that your closest friend should be the person that you're like, you know, same core values, but be like, hey, I think I have a different opinion on this. And they should look at you and go, state your case. See if you can convince me.
Because sometimes I have come into things and been like, I know that I'm right, and I'm going to talk to Micah about this, and I know that she's going to think that I'm right too. And then we start talking about it, and I go, she might have a point. I think she's correct. But anyway, I think we could ramble on for hours and hours.
That was such a good episode.
It was. I was really passionate and yelling.
We had so much to tell you.
We have so much more to tell you. I feel like we're on fire. We're ready.
I love you.
If you don't follow us on all the things.
Oh, my foot just went in the screen.
Don't take screenshots of our feet. And read our newsletter. It's really good.
Yeah. We're working on it. We're trying.
Yeah. Anyway. Okay, I've got to pee. I'm holding my pee.
Me too. Okay.
Okay. Bye. Love you. Have so much fun in Hawaii.
I will.
Okay, goodbye.
Okay, bye.